There are moments in life that seem small while they are happening, yet they quietly divide a life into two parts, before and after. One of those moments often comes when the world grows silent, when the noise of the day fades, and when a person is left alone with the truth they have been avoiding. Imagine a quiet road at night, a single car parked beneath a dim streetlight. The engine is off, but the thoughts inside are loud. In that small space between the steering wheel and the windshield, a person begins to feel something that cannot be ignored anymore. It is not the voice of the world. It is not the pressure of other people. It is something deeper, something older, something that speaks to the soul itself. Because there is a strange thing about truth. We can run from it for years. We can hide it beneath work, entertainment, success, or even religion. But truth has a quiet patience. It waits. It follows us through every city, every relationship, every distraction. And sooner or later, usually when we are alone, it asks a simple question: are you finally ready to admit what you already know? That is why the most powerful moments of change rarely happen in front of crowds. They happen in quiet places, a bedroom at midnight, a walk through an empty street, or sometimes a parked car where no one else can hear the words that are about to be spoken. Because confession is not merely about telling someone what you did. Real confession is when the soul finally stops pretending. It is when a person looks honestly at their life and says, I cannot carry this lie anymore. And strangely enough, the moment we stop pretending is the moment we begin to heal. You see, many people believe that the worst thing in the world is to be exposed. They think if their secrets were known, everything would collapse. But the deeper truth is almost the opposite. The real danger is not that the truth will come out. The real danger is living an entire life hiding from it. A person who hides long enough begins to believe their own disguise. They smile while breaking inside. They speak confidently while feeling empty. They convince everyone else they are strong while quietly knowing something is deeply wrong. But the soul was never designed to live inside a lie. That is why confession feels terrifying at first. It feels like stepping into a storm. Yet strangely, it is the doorway to freedom. The moment the truth is spoken, the weight begins to lift. The darkness begins to lose its power. And that is why the confession in that car last night matters so much. Maybe no one else heard it. Maybe no one else even knows it happened. But heaven notices the smallest honest moment in a human heart. The quiet admission that says, I cannot fix myself. I need help. I need mercy. That sentence, whispered in the silence, has changed more lives than any speech ever given. Because transformation rarely begins with strength. It begins with surrender. And once a person tells the truth about themselves, they finally become someone who can receive the truth about grace. That is the moment everything begins to change. There is something deeply human about trying to appear stronger than we truly are. From the time we are young, we begin learning how to protect the image we present to the world. A child quickly discovers that certain behaviors bring praise while others bring correction. And slowly, the child begins to shape themselves in ways that feel acceptable. As the years pass, this habit grows more complex. We learn how to say the right things in the right moments. We learn how to smile even when we feel tired inside. We learn how to hide confusion behind confidence and hide pain behind humor. None of this is always done with bad intention. Often, it is simply the quiet instinct to survive in a world where weakness feels unsafe. Yet the strange part of this habit is that it does not disappear as we grow older. In fact, it becomes more polished. Adults often become experts at appearing fine even when they are not. A person can walk into a room, speak clearly, laugh with others, and seem perfectly composed while carrying a private storm within their heart. The world sees the surface, but beneath that surface lives another story entirely. Most people carry at least one truth about themselves that feels difficult to face. It may be a mistake from the past that still whispers in the quiet moments of the night. It may be a habit that slowly weakens their sense of dignity. It may be a fear that they try to bury beneath busy schedules and constant activity. Whatever form it takes, that hidden truth often becomes something a person learns to avoid rather than confront. Avoidance can feel comfortable at first. If a person stays busy enough, they can distract themselves from what troubles them. If they keep conversations light and cheerful, they can avoid the deeper questions of the heart. If they focus only on achievements, they can temporarily silence the inner voice asking whether their life is truly honest. For a while, this strategy appears to work, but the soul has a way of remembering what the mind tries to forget. No matter how carefully we construct our outward lives, there remains within us a quiet place where the truth waits patiently. It does not shout. It does not rush. It simply waits. And often it chooses moments of silence to make itself known. Perhaps late at night when the world grows still, or during a quiet drive when there is no one else to impress, the mind begins to wander back toward the things we have been avoiding. This is why so many important moments of self-discovery happen when a person is alone. Without the presence of others to perform for, the mask begins to loosen. Carefully practiced expressions fade, and the honest self slowly begins to appear. It is in these moments that a person may realize something surprising. They have been living divided. On one side stands the person others see. This version of the self is organized, confident, capable, and often admired. On the other side stands the hidden self, the one who knows the doubts, the regrets, the questions, and the weaknesses that remain unresolved. The longer these two versions exist apart from each other, the heavier life begins to feel. A divided heart is exhausting to carry. When a person spends years protecting an image, they must constantly guard it. Every conversation becomes a small performance. Every mistake feels dangerous because it threatens to expose the truth they're trying to hide. Instead of living freely, they become caretakers of a fragile illusion. Yet deep down, most people sense that this is not how life was meant to be lived. There is a quiet longing inside every human heart for something simpler and more honest, a longing to live without pretending, a longing to speak truthfully about struggles instead of disguising them, a longing to be known as we truly are rather than admired for who we appear to be. This longing is not weakness. It is actually one of the most powerful signs that the soul still desires truth. And truth has a remarkable effect on the human spirit. When a person finally admits what they have been hiding, something begins to shift inside them. The weight they carried for so long starts to loosen. The pressure to maintain a false image begins to fade. For the first time in a long while, they begin to feel something rare and precious, relief. It is important to understand that confession is not primarily about shame. Many people misunderstand this. They believe admitting the truth will only increase their embarrassment or expose their failure. But genuine confession works in the opposite direction. Instead of trapping a person in shame, it opens a path out of it. When truth is spoken, even quietly and privately, it brings the hidden self back into the light. The two divided parts of the person begin to come together again. The life they live publicly and the life they live internally no longer need to exist as separate worlds. This reunion of the self is one of the most healing experiences a human being can have. Instead of spending energy protecting a disguise, the person can finally begin using that energy to grow. Instead of defending mistakes, they can begin learning from them. Instead of pretending they are already whole, they can start the honest journey toward becoming whole. And perhaps this is why the most meaningful transformations in life often begin with a simple moment of honesty. Not a dramatic speech, not a grand announcement, just a quiet admission spoken in a quiet place. It may happen in a parked car on a dark night. It may happen in a whispered prayer. It may happen in a conversation where someone finally says the words they have been afraid to speak. But in that moment, something beautiful begins. The real self steps out of hiding, and the long journey toward truth finally begins. The world often teaches us that change begins with effort. From childhood, we hear the same message repeated in different ways. Try harder, work longer, push yourself further, and eventually you will overcome whatever stands in your way. Determination is praised as the solution to nearly every problem. If a person fails, The advice is usually simple: apply more effort next time. If a person struggles, the assumption is that they simply have not tried hard enough yet. This idea has some truth in it, because effort does matter in life. Discipline and perseverance can help a person accomplish many things, yet there is a deeper problem that effort alone cannot solve. Many of the most serious struggles in human life are not caused by a lack of strength or determination. Instead, they are caused by something quieter and more difficult to notice: the refusal to face the truth about ourselves. A person can spend years trying to fix their life while still avoiding the one thing that truly needs attention. They may change their schedule, change their environment, even change the people around them. But if the deeper truth remains untouched, the same problems quietly return in different forms. It is possible to run very fast while still moving in the wrong direction. Effort without honesty often leads a person in circles. They work harder and harder, yet the deeper conflict inside them remains unchanged. This is why many people reach moments in life when they feel exhausted, even though they have been trying so hard. They have been using effort as a tool to escape truth rather than confront it. The human heart has a remarkable ability to defend itself from uncomfortable realities. When we sense something about ourselves that feels painful to admit, we often build explanations that make the problem appear smaller than it is. We blame circumstances, other people, or simple bad luck. We convince ourselves that our behavior is justified because of what we have experienced. Over time, these explanations become so familiar that we stop questioning them. But there is a quiet cost to living this way. When we defend our mistakes instead of admitting them, we unknowingly give those mistakes greater power over our lives. A problem that cannot be named cannot be solved. A wound that is never acknowledged cannot truly heal. This is why the moment of honest confession is so important. It removes the fog that has been clouding our understanding. For the first time, a person begins to see themselves clearly without excuses or distortions. Clarity may feel uncomfortable at first, but it is also strangely liberating. The person no longer needs to maintain the exhausting task of defending a false story about their life. Imagine someone who has been walking through a dark room for many years. They keep bumping into the same furniture again and again, yet they blame the room itself for being difficult. They move cautiously, frustrated by the obstacles that seem to appear from nowhere. But the real problem is not the room. The problem is the absence of light. Confession is the moment the light turns on. Suddenly, the obstacles that once seemed mysterious become visible. The person can finally see where the table stands, where the chair blocks the path, and where there is actually space to move forward. The room has not changed, but the understanding of the room has changed completely. In the same way, honesty allows a person to see the true shape of their own life. Instead of wandering through confusion, they begin to recognize the patterns that have been guiding their behavior. They see how certain decisions have led to certain consequences. They see how certain attitudes have shaped their relationships. And perhaps most importantly, they see where they have been fooling themselves. This moment of realization can feel humbling, but humility is not the enemy of growth. In fact, humility is often the very doorway through which growth enters a life. When a person finally admits, "I was wrong about this," they open the possibility of learning something new. Without that admission, learning cannot truly begin. There is also something deeply freeing about abandoning the need to appear perfect. Many people spend enormous energy trying to convince others and themselves that they have everything under control. But the truth is that every human being carries weaknesses and blind spots. Pretending otherwise does not make us stronger. It only isolates us from the help and wisdom that might guide us forward. Honesty, on the other hand, creates space for transformation. When a person acknowledges their failure, they stop fighting against reality and begin working with it. Instead of defending old habits, they become open to new ones. Instead of repeating the same mistakes, they start understanding why those mistakes happened in the first place. This is the quiet power of confession. It does not magically erase the past, but it changes how the past influences the future. A person who faces the truth about themselves gains something extremely valuable: the ability to choose a different path. And that choice, once seen clearly, becomes one of the most hopeful moments in a person's life. Because the moment we stop pretending that nothing is wrong is the moment we finally gain the power to make things right. There is a quiet fear that lives in the heart of almost every person, though few are willing to admit it openly. It is the fear that if people truly knew us, if they saw the full story of our thoughts, our failures, our weaknesses, they would turn away from us. We imagine that our mistakes are too serious, our struggles too embarrassing, or our doubts too troubling to be understood. Because of this fear, many people build careful barriers around the most honest parts of themselves. They speak freely about small things but remain silent about the matters that truly weigh on their hearts. This silence slowly becomes a habit. At first it may seem harmless. After all, everyone keeps certain things private, but over time the silence grows heavier. A person may begin to feel that they are living two different lives. One life exists on the surface, where everything appears calm, successful, and under control. The other life exists beneath that surface, where questions, regrets, and hidden struggles quietly remain. The problem is not simply that the secret exists, the deeper problem is the belief that the secret must remain hidden forever. When a person believes this, their life begins to revolve around protecting that hidden truth. Conversations are carefully managed. Certain topics are avoided. Relationships remain shallow because deeper honesty feels too risky. Even moments that should feel joyful can become clouded by the constant effort of maintaining the appearance that everything is fine. And the longer this continues, the more powerful the secret begins to feel. Secrets grow in darkness. When they remain unspoken, the mind begins to exaggerate their power. A mistake that might be understood by others becomes, in our imagination, an unforgivable failure. A struggle that could be addressed with help becomes, in our thoughts, a permanent mark of shame. The secret begins to feel like a monster hiding in the shadows, something so frightening that we dare not even look directly at it. Yet there is something deeply ironic about this fear. The monster often exists only because we refuse to bring it into the light. When truth remains hidden, the imagination fills the darkness with terrible possibilities. But when the truth is finally spoken, it often appears far less powerful than we expected. The moment a person says the words they have been holding back, something changes. The silence that once protected the secret also protected the fear surrounding it. Once the silence is broken, the fear begins to lose its strength. This is why the act of confession can feel both terrifying and strangely relieving at the same time. Before speaking, the heart races with anxiety. A person imagines rejection, judgment, or disappointment. But after the truth is spoken, many people experience something unexpected. Instead of the world collapsing, the world simply continues and the person feels lighter than before. It is as though a heavy door has finally been opened. For years they may have been standing behind that door, convinced that stepping outside would destroy them. Yet once they stepped through, they realized the prison they feared was often one they had built themselves. The walls were made of silence, the lock was made of shame, and the key was simply honesty. Confession does not magically remove every consequence of past mistakes. Life rarely works that way. But confession does something equally important. It restores a sense of freedom within the soul. A person who has told the truth no longer needs to live in constant fear of being discovered. They no longer need to rehearse excuses or maintain complicated stories to protect their image. They are simply living in the truth. This freedom is more powerful than many people realize. When a person is no longer hiding, they become capable of real change. Instead of spending energy guarding the past, they can focus on shaping the future. Instead of pretending they are stronger than they are, they can begin seeking the help, wisdom, and growth they truly need. And perhaps most importantly, honesty opens the door to genuine relationships. When people only show their polished, perfect side, relationships remain distant and fragile. Others may admire them, but admiration is not the same as understanding. Real connection happens when people share their struggles as well as their successes. It happens when someone says, "This is where I failed," or "This is where I am still learning." In those moments, something deeply human appears. Instead of standing alone behind a mask, Two people meet in honesty, and that meeting creates a kind of strength that pretending never could. This is why confession, though it begins as an act of courage, often becomes the beginning of healing. The truth that once seemed too frightening to face becomes the very thing that releases a person from years of quiet isolation. The secret loses its grip. The fear begins to fade, and the person who once felt trapped discovers something surprising. The path forward was always there, waiting on the other side of honesty. Sometimes all it takes to find that path is the willingness to speak the truth aloud. And perhaps this is the quiet truth behind that moment in the car last night. Nothing around you may have looked different. The road was still the same. The night air was still heavy with silence. The world continued moving as it always does, unaware that anything important had happened. Yet something within you had shifted in a way that cannot easily be undone, because when a person finally speaks the truth about their own heart, a door opens that can never fully close again. The old life built on hiding begins to lose its strength. The masks that once felt necessary begin to feel unnecessary. And slowly, step by step, a new kind of life begins to form. One built not on pretending, but on honesty. The confession itself may have been simple, perhaps only a few quiet words spoken into the darkness, words no crowd applauded, words no one recorded. Yet those words carried a power far greater than they seemed in that moment. For the first time, you stopped running from the truth. And that is where every real transformation begins, not with perfection, not with sudden strength, but with the quiet courage to say, "This is who I truly am." From that moment forward, the road ahead becomes different. It may still hold challenges. It may still require patience, humility, and change. But it is no longer a road walked in denial. It is a road walked in truth. And truth, though sometimes difficult, has a way of leading people toward freedom. So if last night you sat in silence and finally spoke the words you had been avoiding, then something remarkable has already begun. The story of your life did not end in that moment. It turned a page, and sometimes the most important page in a person's life begins with a simple confession spoken in the quiet of the night.